Hello again, and welcome back. We're happy to have you here with us today. I'm Pastor Sherry Marks, pastor of the Church of the Open Door in Ukiah, California. If you happen to have been here before and have come back again after a few weeks' absence, I probably should explain why it's all different now. Because we are now meeting in person in Ukiah, we're not doing a full worship service here anymore. But I am recording my message for everyone to see out there. And the messages are a little bit different. Rather than starting from an assigned scripture and working outward from that, I'm starting with things, quotes, bits I've read someplace, things that tweaked my interest, things I might hear on the news, things that relate to how we live every day, and then finding ways to relate that to Scripture. My goal is to prove that or at least show that Scripture is not just something we have in a box and it sits upon a shelf and it's something holy and over there, but that it can be part of our everyday existence if we look for it. So, again, welcome. We're happy to have you here. This is today's message. We live in a world where stories are told. Stories that teach us life doesn't mean anything and that humanity has no great purpose. It's a good calling, then, to speak a better story. How brightly a better story shines, how easily the world looks to it in wonder. How grateful we are to hear these stories, and how happy it makes us to repeat them. Now, I've been in love with this particular quote since I first ran into it. I don't remember where or when that was, just that it has intrigued me ever since. The author is Donald Miller, and it comes from his book, A Million Miles in 1,000 Years: What I Learned While Editing My Life. Miller is an author, obviously, writing in two different areas, though. He is CEO of a marketing company and has written several books on that topic, but he's also well known in spirituality circles for his highly personal stories of spiritual experience while not being particularly a churchgoer. He is probably best known for his bestseller book, Blue Like Jazz, which is, as its subtitle, Non-Religious Thoughts on Christian Spirituality. Now, full disclosure here, I have not yet read either of these books. I've attempted Blue Like Jazz twice, but ended up putting it down both times. It just didn't speak to me at the moment. I do, however, know people who love this book. I'll try it again one of these days. But it's this one quote that intrigues me. It's attached itself to my mind like a stickle burr and refuses to let go. We live in a world where bad stories are told, that life doesn't mean anything, and humanity has no great purpose. I doubt that any one of us could seriously dispute this statement. Turn on the TV, scan the internet, read a newspaper, listen to people talk on the street. The news that surrounds us is often horrible. A mutating pandemic, wildfires, floods, wars, mindless shootings, family members and random strangers addicted to political lies. I could, unfortunately, go on and on. If we listen to nothing but this constant negative babble, we too easily come to believe that it's all true and there is little hope. The reason all this negativity affects us so is that the bulk of it comes to us in the form of stories. Someone's story about what is happening, someone's story about someone's suffering, someone's anger, And stories affect us much more deeply than straight facts. Give us a recitation of facts, and we might listen to them or not. Tell us a story, and we can all be transported to another place, another time, another way of seeing things. There's a reason that Scripture shows us so many examples of Jesus teaching with parables. Now, a parable is a special kind of story. A parable starts out like an old familiar tale, one you've heard a dozen times. But before we know it, we find ourselves, mouth agape, facing a conclusion that was the last thing in the world we expected. When we today, for instance, hear the story of the Good Samaritan, we aren't surprised by the ending because the biblical version is the only version we've ever heard of this story. And we probably have never even seen a Samaritan. But Jesus' original hearers would have been deeply shocked by this ending, because one of the deep-set tenets of their lives was that Samaritans were horrible, blasphemous people without an ounce of good to be found in them. How could a Samaritan possibly end up as the good guy in this story? That's what parables do. Jesus told a story about a badly injured man who needed help and was given that help by another man who looked past societal and religious expectations and helped him. And if Jews hated Samaritans at that time, it is equally true that Samaritans hated the Jews. This story goes both directions. And this is the story that we still tell 2,000 years later. One that tells us that we don't have to remain stuck in the hatreds others try to force on us. Jesus gave us a better story than the expected one. I read a brief story online just this morning about someone who had done some small thing, not expecting any praise for it, but who later received a note from a complete stranger thanking her because you made a difference in my life. With that simple, unimportant little thing that she had done. This person made a difference by telling a different story, a better story. And this story made a light in my day as well. Every one of us has the choice to repeat the bad stories told us, or to speak a better story, as Miller puts it. Or as St. Paul put it in his letter to the Philippians, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, keep your mind on those things. Scripture is made up of stories. It doesn't say a whole lot about stories, it just is stories. Most of them are good, but there are bad scripture stories, you know. Stories of violence and selfishness that then use God as their justification for the terrible things that had been done and that, for some odd reason, go unpunished. Those are bad stories. I don't care that they're in the Bible. They're bad stories. But there are so many good stories, stories of love and of promise and of hope. These are the stories that we remember the most. The ones we were taught in Sunday school that seem to stick with us our whole lives. The stories of Jesus are still what bring us here today to be seeking to learn more. We want to hear more of those kind of stories. These are the good stories, the better stories, the ones that shine light into the darkness. We can tell good stories too. Sure, we can repeat the latest scandal or the latest lie, or we can listen for the goodness that is all around us. It really is. And we can repeat the story of that goodness, that kindness. We all long for that kind of story, ones that lift us up rather than dragging us down. It could be something on a world scale or simply some small kindness. It could be a Jesus parable, or it might be something you overheard in line at the grocery store. The world is full of good stories. One of the great tellers of great stories, J.R.R. Tolkien, from the Lord and the Rings saga, and I think this comes from The Two Towers, has a marvelous saying about stories. From Sam, comforting a despondent Frodo. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could that end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those are the stories that stayed with you. The stories that stay with us are the ones that tell us there is hope, and that kindness can indeed be found in this world. If it seems hard to find, then we ourselves can go out and be that kindness, that hope. We live in a world where bad stories are told. It's a good calling, then, to speak a better story. So tell your own stories of goodness, even the ones as simple as holding the door and exchanging an honest smile with a stranger. Tell them with your words, your actions, your thoughts. The world will be better for it. And so will you. Thank you for joining us here today, and may your week be filled with blessings.